Lesson 4, Part 2, Resizing and Rotating Layers. Click the visibility icon for the beach layer to make it visible. You'll notice that you can now see the beach layer on top of the pineapple. Make certain that the beach layer is active by clicking upon it to select it. It will be blue in the Layers panel. Then we're going to access a transformation. We can do that through the menus by going to Edit, Free Transform, but you'll notice the shortcut is Control or Command T. Since I'm here, I will go ahead and press Free Transform. That puts a bounding box or handles around the edge of that image. We're going to change the size of that object to about 50% of its current size. Now it will be difficult for me to show you this at the same time that I resize the object, but you notice that the width and height are right now at 100%. As you drag in on a corner handle, you'll want a straight two-pointed arrow. Hold your Shift key, and that will keep the height and width constrained to their original proportions. But be watching up at the top on the width and height until you reach 50%. There will be a point in the movie, my movie, that you will not be able to see those numbers, but I'm going to 50%. And it doesn't have to be exactly 50%. Go to about 50%. I stopped at 50.4. Now that we have that about half of its original size, we're also going to rotate it a bit. Place your cursor. You'll notice when your cursor is to the outside edge of one of the corner handles and not touching it, that you have a curved two-pointed arrow. I'm above the top right corner. It could be any one of them, and I'm rotating a bit by pulling down with my mouse so that I slant the beach image sideways a bit. Once I have that slanted and sized to the position I want it, because I'm in free transform right now, I can click the commit check on the tool options bar, or I can press enter, and that commits the transformation and removes the bounding box. Now I will want to relocate that image. I'm going to display the flower layer, and once I've displayed the flower layer, I'm going to make certain that my beach image is still the active layer, and I'm going to drag, I have the move tool, upward to sort of tuck the little beach image underneath the edges of the flower. It doesn't have to be in exact position. You'll see an illustration on page 103 of the textbook where that has been placed. Press Control S to save your file, Control or Command if you're on a Mac, and that saves the file to the point we are at right now. Now we're going to use a filter to create some artwork. Go down and select your background layer. Once you have the background layer selected, create a new layer by going to the Layer menu and choosing New Layer, or you can just click the New Layer icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. That will create a new transparent layer called Layer 1 above the background layer. Double-click upon the text Layer 1 and type the name Clouds. Now, of course, at this moment that layer is transparent and there aren't any clouds upon it, but built into Photoshop is a cloud filter, so we're going to create some clouds. Right now my colors are set to default, a black foreground and a white background. Click upon the foreground color to open the color picker. Once the color picker is open, go into a range of blues and look for a sky blue color. Now the book probably has an exact setting, but find a sky blue color that you think is attractive. Once you've selected the shade within the larger window on the left, click OK, and you'll notice that your colors are set to a sky blue and a white. Now go to the filter menu at the top and choose Render, the render category, and then choose Clouds. Photoshop will mix your foreground and background colors to create that cloud filter. Go to the Layers panel and hold the Alt key while you click the visibility icon for the Clouds layer, and this is what Photoshop has done for you with the cloud filter. It's mixed the foreground and background colors to simulate the look of clouds. Now go back and Alt-click the Clouds layer to make all your layers visible again. Next, we're going to drag a new layer into the document. It's going to be a flower. We could open the flower, do the two up vertically like we did a moment before, But you can also go to your file management tool on your system. I'm on a Mac, so I'm using Finder, but if you're on a PC, you would use Windows Explorer. Access your lessons folder, access lesson 4, and we want to drag the Flower 2 image into our current document. So I can just relocate my Finder window and drag Flower 2 into this document, release, and the flower is added to this image. It's the purple flower that you can barely see in the background. It comes into the image with a bounding box because it was added to Photoshop as a smart object. We'll learn more about smart objects later, but smart objects, so just a little bit of information about them, they can be scaled and transformed multiple times without degrading the image, so it retains the quality of the original. We have to commit that addition of the smart object, and we could either press enter or click the commit checkbox, and we have added the flower to the image. The location of the flower is behind the pineapple for me right now, so I need to make certain I drag it above the pineapple, both the pineapple and the pineapple copy layers. And then I'm going to drag down, I have my move tool, and place that purple flower, there are actually 2 of them, but only one needs to be visible, in the lower left-hand corner of the image. It came in with its original name of Flower 2, the file name. You'll notice the little square in the lower right-hand corner that tells you that is a smart object, a special type of object in Photoshop that you can edit without making permanent changes to. Now that we have it added, we're going to work on some text. I think it might be a good idea to press Control or Command S to save our file again. In adding text, we're going to make certain that the Hawaii text layer is visible. It's placed here toward the bottom center. As I mentioned, that was very likely a text layer to start with that has been rasterized. Once we have that layer visible, we want to make certain that we have no selected objects. I don't have any, but Control D would deselect those objects. We're going to go to the foreground color swatch and choose a grassy shade of green. Click OK. Once we've chosen that color as our currently active foreground color, we're going to go to the Type tool. Once I select the Type tool, I notice that whatever my foreground color was, that's the color now set for the Type tool. Before we add type, we're going to make some changes or make certain that we have the correct changes to add the text. Choose the font called Birch Standard. On the font style, leave that set to regular. Choose a fairly large font, about a 36-point font. Remember that there are several ways to change your font style: by dropping the arrow down and choosing from a preset, by using the scrubby slider to the left. From the anti-alias, choose crisp, and we need to set tracking. Well, tracking isn't visible on the tool options bar. There is a special panel for working with type. Go to the Windows menu and choose the character panel. Once you've chosen the character panel, you will see it pop out or display to the left of the original panels, and all of the settings that we set on the tool option bar could also be set here. The tracking value is here. Make certain you set that to 250. We want this to appear in all caps. These are special little font options. Here is bold and italic and all caps and small caps and so on. So choose the one that says all caps. Choose also the one that is bold. And I think that's all the settings that we want right now. Click below Hawaii and then type Island Paradise. Once you have typed Island Paradise, select the Move tool and drag that text below Hawaii. Now it isn't real visible at the moment, but we're going to add some layer styles that will make it more visible. To do so, we're going to change Hawaii first. In changing Hawaii, we're going to apply a gradient to the Hawaii layer. So go to your Layers panel and click upon the Hawaii layer to select it. Then hold down Control or Command and click the Layer thumbnail. That will automatically select all of the pixels that reside upon that layer, in our case the characters in the word Hawaii. Go to your Tool Options bar, and from the Tool Options bar select the Gradient tool. We're going to add a linear gradient to this text. Go to your foreground color and open the color picker. Choose a bright orange, which will be here at the bottom. Click up on the shade you'd like to use, and then click OK. That leaves me with a foreground color of orange and a background color of white. I have the Gradient tool, so I'm looking at the Tool Options bar and choosing the option that says Foreground to Background. That will blend the foreground and background colors together. The next 4 buttons make certain you have the first one set, which is actually a linear gradient. You can have a radial gradient or an angle or a reflected or a diamond gradient. So I have the first one, a linear gradient. Now that I have my gradient tool set, I'm going to go to the bottom of the characters in Hawaii, and I'm going to drag from the bottom up. To drag in a straight line, hold the Shift key, dragging from the bottom to the top of the characters. That will place the foreground color at the direction that I began dragging. So the orange is placed at the bottom, and then that faded to white at the top. So we faded from the orange foreground color to the white background color and added that gradient. We're ready to deselect our text. Remember that you can go to Select, Deselect, or press Control Command D. To add layer styles, we're going to go back to the Island Paradise layer, select it in your Layers panel, and then we could go to Layer, Layer Style, Drop Shadow, which seems too much trouble to me. I'm going to click the FX icon at the bottom of the screen and choose Drop Shadow. Now, once I've chosen that, the Layer Style dialog appears, Layer Style dialog box appears, and you can see the changes over here to the left. In the Drop Shadow dialog box, make certain that Preview is selected, and then make certain your blending mode is set to multiply, your opacity is set to 75%, the angle is set to 78 degrees, the distance is set to 5 pixels, the spread is set to 30%, and the size is set to 10 pixels. That will change the look of your gradient. You can see the gradient applied to the Paradise text, the Island Paradise text now. Click OK to accept these settings. Now we have a nice layer style added to the green text, and we would like to copy that same layer style with a few modifications to the Hawaii text. There are a couple of different ways to do that. I can see the FX, I can see the layer style. I'm going to collapse the layer style. I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key and drag the FX. You see how it's dragging in an upward direction to the Hawaii layer. I'm going to release my mouse, and the same layer style of Drop Shadow with the same settings was applied to Hawaii. Now that I've added that layer style, I'm going to add another layer style to Hawaii. And to do so, I can just double click upon the FX to open the Layer Style dialog box and watch the Hawaii text as I make the addition. The layer style that we're going to add is Stroke. So I select Stroke. Notice I clicked at the right and I'm in the stroke settings. The size of the stroke is going to be 4 pixels, that is. The position is going to be on the outside of the text. The blending mode is going to be normal. The opacity setting is going to be 100%. It will be fully opaque. The color of the layer style is going to be a green similar to the Island Paradise green. Right now I'm seeing a stroke of black. I click the foreground color box to open the color picker on top of the layer style dialog box, and in my opinion, to get a close green, I'll just sneak out and sample the green in Island Paradise. That samples the green shade. I'm clicking OK, and I have a stroke added to Hawaii along with its drop shadow, and the stroke is green, the same green that I was previously using on the text layer. I am going to click OK to accept those changes, and now I see that the Hawaii layer has 2 layer styles. It has a stroke and a drop shadow. Remember the eye icons? If I turn off the eye on stroke, you no longer see the stroke on Hawaii. If I turn off the eye on drop shadow, you no longer see the drop shadow. Yeah, of course, if I turn them back on, you see both of these layer styles or special effects. Now would be a good time to save our file again with the Control or Command S. Next, we're going to add a layer style to the flower layer. So go to your Layers panel and select the flower layer. I'll go ahead and collapse the layer styles on the Hawaii layer. With the flower layer style selected, go to the bottom of the Layers panel, click upon the FX, and choose Drop Shadow. Once we've chosen Drop Shadow, change the opacity setting to 60%, change the distance to 13 pixels, change the spread to 9%, and those are all the changes. We do want to talk just a moment about use global light. Normally, when you're applying layer styles to multiple layers within an image, you want that checkbox selected, and that means the light setting, the angle of the light, will be consistent throughout all of the layer styles that have been added. So do make certain that use global light has been checked. The blending mode should also be set to multiply. Now we're not going to click OK because we're going to add another layer style. That layer style that we just added is visible around the edges of the red flower at the top right. To add another layer style, we're going to click upon Satin. I'm clicking to the right. Once I click upon Satin, it doesn't look very good at the moment, but we're going to make some changes. Change the opacity setting to 20%. Change the distance to 22 pixels. And we're going to choose a fuchsia shade that would complement the flower. So here is the shade of the satin effect. And we're looking for something that's sort of a fuchsia pink red color. And you'll see how that brightens up the flower. So choose your color. So get a good color for that flower and click OK. We've added the satin effect and we've added it in a fuchsia color. Go ahead and click OK. And that effect enhances the look of the flower in the upper right hand corner. If I turned off the effects, you see the color of the flower. Turn on the effects, just brightens it up a bit. Next thing we'd like to do is add an adjustment layer. Adjustment layers are amazing in that they enhance or change the pixel data on the layers below them, but they are non-destructive in that adjustment layers stand on their own and can be deleted or can be hidden, not affect the file, so they're non-destructive in nature. This adjustment layer is going to be added to the flower in the lower left-hand corner, the purple flower. So go to your Layers panel and click upon Flowers 2. Remember, that's the Smart object. To add an adjustment layer, you can use the Adjustments panel above the Layers panel. I know that Hue and Saturation is the first icon on the second row. Click upon that. You'll see in the Layers panel that a Hue and Saturation layer has been added. In the Properties panel that pops out to the left, change the hue to 43. You could drag or enter the number. Change the saturation to 19. And change the lightness to 0 if necessary. Now what you may have noticed, your entire image has changed because a Hue and Saturation adjustment layer will make changes to all the pixel data on layers that reside below it. So everything from the flower down, the flower in the lower left, brightened up on the screen. The pineapple even turned green. As you look at this layer structure, again, that Hue and Saturation layer is affecting all of these layers. We only want it to affect the flower layer. You can right-click upon this layer and you can actually create a clipping mask. A shortcut to create a clipping mask is to place your cursor on the line between those two layers and hold your Alt or Option key. And you'll see a little icon that shows you it's going to clip downward. That's Alt or Option. Touch the line between the two and click. That creates the little down pointing arrow that says I am making an adjustment, but only to the layer that resides below. You'll notice now that the pineapple, the sky, everything that was down below is back to its original colors, and only the flower is being affected by that adjustment. Let's go ahead and save our file again with a Control S, and then we will update some of our layer effects. In the Layers panel, I believe this is new to CS6 because I had not noticed it before. There at the top of the Layers panel, you can choose to look at layers or filter them. It's called filter, but it's sort of sorting them. Make certain that's set to what kind of layers they are. If you want to see only adjustment layers and you click the adjustment layer, I'm sorry, that was the filter icon, then you'll see only the ones that have had filters. Then if you click the next icon, you will see only those that have adjustment layers. Now you have to turn this one off. This was filter for pixel layers, my fault. Filter for pixel layers, that showed all of the layers that had pixel data. Turn that one off and only the second one on, and you're looking at only adjustment layers, which shows us we only have one. Turn that one off, turn on the type layers. It will show you the only layer in our image that is actually a type layer, the Island Paradise. So while we're looking at the Island Paradise layer, click upon it to select it. We're going to change its size. Now we don't need to drag across the text to change its size because the layer is currently selected, but we will need the Type tool. Select the Type tool, change the size of type to 32. Of course, you'll see that the text is now smaller than it used to be. Because you have the Type tool, you can quickly enter text editing mode by just clicking within the type. I clicked right to the left of the P, and I'm going to type of and space. Now I'm going to get my Move tool, and I'm going to center Island of Paradise below Hawaii. Hawaii, Island of Paradise. I think to myself, no, I don't like the of, so I'm going back to the Type tool, clicking to the left of the P, and I'm deleting the space and the two characters in the word of. I'm going back to my Move tool. Remember, you can use the shortcuts for the tools also, T for type, V for move, and I'm moving Island Paradise back underneath Hawaii. Remember the arrow keys on the keyboard that you can use those to nudge into position. I nudged just a little bit to the left. So that's how you make changes to type. You don't have to select it to make those changes. Now that we have that changed, we might want to do a Control or Command S to save again. We're almost finished with this image. We'd like to add a border around the outside edge. Remember, we're filtering to see just type layers. Click upon the T, and now we see all of our layers again. Select the postage stamp layer. And once we've selected the postage stamp layer, we would like to enhance it a bit. We're going to drag it with the Move tool. Make certain that you have the Move tool selected. We're going to drag it to the middle of the screen. Here it is at the top. Kind of to the center right, maybe right about here. And that repositions it. Its blending mode is multiply, so we can see it just a little bit better than we could before. We're going to select our entire image. Two ways to do that. You could say select all, or you could press Control or Command A. You'll notice that there is the dash border around the entire outside edge of the image. Then we're going to select Modify Border. Now, if I added a border at this point, you can see I'm getting a little in a hurry as I get toward the end. I would be adding it to the postage stamp layer, and that isn't a good move, so I'm going to cancel. And before I add that border, I'm going to create a new layer by clicking the new layer icon, better, at the at the bottom of the Layers panel, which creates a new layer at the top of the Layers panel named Layer 1, double-clicking upon the text and typing border, pressing Enter. I still have that area selected around the outside of the image. I have the whole image selected, and I'm going back to Select, Modify, Border. Now I'm going to tell it how big of a selection to make based upon the whole image being selected. I want my border selection to be 10 pixels, so I'm typing 10 in the box and saying OK. And I have a selection of 10 pixels here on the outside edge. I'm going to select white for my foreground color. The easiest way to do that might be to press X or click the switch icon. Make certain white is your foreground. I'm going to the Edit menu, and I'm choosing Fill. From the dialog box, I am going to choose the foreground color, leave all the other settings at their default, and click OK. Now I have a white border around the outside edge of my image, and I need to deselect with a Control D. Now that the image is deselected, I'm to the point that I'm ready to save it one last time as it is with all of its layers intact. I'm going to look at my Layers panel and collapse all of my layer styles, make certain that all of my layers have relevant names, and I'm ready to save it. So I'm going to press Control or Command S. That saves our 04 working file. Now this is a fairly large file. The way you can tell that is to click the arrow here at the bottom on the status bar and ask to see the document size. The document size tells you that my file is currently 27.5 megabytes. But if I were to flatten the image, it would only be 2.29 megabytes. Well, that sounds like a great idea, but flattening this image that we have just created would cause us to lose our layer structure. And you want to always have a copy of the file that retains the layer structure should you need to make changes in the future. The best thing for us to do would be to create a duplicate copy of this image and flatten it so that we have the smaller sized image that we might choose to share by email or some other method for sharing with another person. In creating a duplicate, I'm going to go to the image menu at the top, and I'm going to say duplicate. That is going to create a duplicate copy of the current image. Of course, it will have the same size and the same layer structure at the moment. So I'm calling this 04 working copy. I could change that name. I guess the book wants me to call it 04 flat.psd. I will click OK. And now I have two documents open. Here is the original file. Here is the flattened version. You'll notice that the flattened version has the same file sizes visible at the bottom. I'm going to say the 2 megabyte versus the 27 megabyte, and then it also has all of the layers intact. On the duplicate version that we're going to flatten, we do so by going to Layer, Flatten Image. That takes all of the layers that were present and combines them into one layer. As you can guess, we cannot modify those layers easily because they've been flattened into a single layer. To save this file, press Control or Command S, and once you have saved the file or you're in the process of saving the file, it will ask you what you want to name it and where. Accept the defaults by clicking Save. And you'll notice at the bottom of the flattened version on the status bar that the numbers are the same. So the actual file size of this version called flat is 2.29 megabytes because it has been flattened. But that in no way affected our working file, which is still 27.5 megabytes and has all of the layers intact. So we have two copies of the file, one flattened, one unflattened. Great difference in their file size. That does conclude Lesson 4. You'll notice in the book that there is a good description of layer comps on page 119 that I would like for you to read. There's also a fun extra credit activity on page 120 and 121 that you might enjoy. This probably happens with family photographs quite frequently when you have 10 to 12 people in the photo and everyone looks good but one or two of the people, and then you have another photo where they look great. It shows you how to combine those two and create one image that has everyone looking great in the same photo. So I think that you would enjoy that. That does conclude Lesson 4.